Good afternoon and welcome to the Veterans Forum. This program is coming to you through the facilities of the Bedford Local Community Station here in Bedford, New Hampshire. My name is Bob Stevens, and I've been the producer and host of this program for the last 15 years and keep wanting to go. It's set up at the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project, which started in the year 2000, wherein they asked stations such as this and guys throughout the country if they could and would help any guy and gal who served in any of the services in any conflict, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, and so forth, as we've gone through the last number of years. If they can and will share their service experiences and the impact it's had on their lives. In a televised interview, each person will be given a copy of that for their own use or for their family's history. But more importantly, the master part will go to the Library of Congress's database and meld it in with everybody else's so that no matter who you were and wherever you are, whatever you did and however you contributed will be recorded the ways. What we're doing really, we're recording history by the people who made it. You can't get any better than that. Now, before I start though, I must give you this information. This system, 211, is a special telephone system throughout the state of New Hampshire, where any guy and gal, or even their friends who may need help, can call that number. And, well, you cannot see it, but there are 28 different groups and organizations here that will help you, whatever your need is. And if they can't help it, man, you don't have a problem. But now today we have another start. I'll ask Roger to call and identify himself, and then we'll take him off. One of the good things about this one, though, it's one of the few times when an old Seabee has had a younger Seabee here on the show. Roger, welcome to board. Pronounce your last name, spell it for the record, please, and your address right now.
Sure, it's Roger LeBlanc, Leblanc, and thank you for having me on your show today.
My pleasure.
Bob.
It took a long time to get you here, you know that too.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, now where do you now live, and what branch of service were you in? We know it, but tell it again.
I was in the U.S. Navy Seabees, and that stands for Construction Battalion, and there's like 7 different groups in the battalion itself. I was a heavy equipment operator. Other were, heavy duty mechanics. You had electricians, had plumbers.
Okay, we'll get to that, but how about going back? What was your childhood like? Where and when were you born, and what was your family like growing up before you went into service?
Well, I came from a very large family. It was 9 of us around the kitchen table.
Wow.
Back in the 50s, yeah. So.
Where?
In Manchester, the west side of Manchester.
Okay. What?
It was.
When were you born?
Yeah, I was born 1946.
Okay, so you're a kid.
Yeah. So we had a good. We weren't well off, but we didn't go without anything, so that was good. We had. I had 3 brothers and three sisters. I still have 3 brothers and 3 sisters.
Good.
In fact, we're all in our 70s right now. All 7 of us are in our 70s. And my oldest brother joined the Army. My second oldest joined the Coast Guard. Myself, I joined the Navy. And lastly, my other son wanted to join, but he got disqualified. He was 4F. He had some problems with his eyes and that stuff. My father would have loved to have gone in World War II with all those kids around.
Just get away from them.
But they told him, no, you get too big of a family. You got to stay with them. So.
What was your life like in your early childhood days?
Yeah,
like
well, back in the 50s, it was nice. I remember my father saying that back around 1955 was the absolute best time to live because all you had was the Cold War and everything was prosperous in that, so that was good. But getting towards I graduated from high school, and after I wasn't interested in college, so I went to Bishop Bradley High School, and the what happened is the principal there could see some of us that weren't interested in going to college, so they kind of placed us. They set up appointments for us after we, by the time we prior to graduating, to see if we could get a job. They would set up appointments.
Oh,
so,
good.
Yeah, so that was very nice of them to do that. And I worked at Manchester Chrysler Plymouth in the parts department and that stuff, and that was very rewarding for
Now, was this
me.
a paid job? Or?
Oh, yeah, it
Oh,
was
good.
paid, yeah, paid job, yeah. So, but then I could see I was turning 18 and a half, and the next thing you know, all my buddies were getting draft notices.
Mm-hmm.
So I had just broken up with my girlfriend, and I thought to myself, I says, I'm not going to get drafted and go end up in Vietnam. I'm going to join the Navy, and I'm going to have a girl in every port.
Mm-hmm.
So bottom line is that the only port that I got to see was the port of Da Nang, and all my buddies ended up going to Germany for some reason or
That'll
another.
teach you.
So that was a rude awakening, you might say. But I signed up early. By signing up early, I signed up in June of 1966.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, and by signing up 3 months early, I was granted. That was February of 1966. By getting that jump, I was guaranteed what they call an A school, and that would give me some training to do one particular job, in the Seabees. So I ended up going to boot camp, and that was in June 1st, 1966, June 2nd, I think.
Where did you go in boot?
In boot camp, I ended up going to Great Lakes, Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was quite a facility. It was huge. It was their dining room would seat 1,500, service
Wow.
people at one time. So boot camp was basically learning how to. They would teach us. We'd have regular classrooms that we attended every day about Navy life and whatnot. Also, how to fire weapons and that. Again, this was still very basic boot camp.
Did you actually fire?
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah. We did. Yeah.
Excuse me.
In fact, all of a sudden, I ran. In one case, I ran what they call a possible 10, which means that all my 10 shots were in the chest area, and but in another attempt, this guy he called a halt on a firing line. He said, "Whoa, whoa!" We said, "What's going?" He said, "You've got like 11 or 12 hits on your target." And come to find out, the guy next to me was shooting on my target instead of his, which is right in front of his. So
how many were yours? You want to tell me?
oh yeah, I got 10 out of 10.
Okay.
I was good. I was good with that. So towards the end, and we used to have in boot camp, you were allowed 2 weekends off. I think we spent I think it was for some reason like 13 weeks. I don't
Okay.
know if that sounds right or not, but it felt like 13 weeks.
Oh, was that in the wintertime?
That was that was June, July,
Oh, okay.
June, July. So it wasn't bad at all. But it ended up that I would go down to Chicago. There's a train, a green and yellow train that would go from Great Lakes to Chicago back and forth.
Like a trolley car.
Yeah, and I made some friends who were in my unit in boot camp with me. who had homes nearby.
Oh.
So that was interesting.
Did
you
you
know?
go with all of them both times?
Yeah, both times. Yeah. First time I went into Chicago, and then I was introduced to this very attractive blonde who I couldn't imagine what she would see in me with my shaved head. I looked like a 300-watt bulb, but at any rate, we did have a good time. The second time around, we ended up going to Elgin, Illinois, and that was interesting too. That's a good friend that I still make in contact with.
Good. How about the first one?
The first one was interesting, but I really can't get into that too much.
Okay.
All right.
This is a family show.
Yeah, right. After that, I from boot camp, I ended up going to Davisville, Rhode Island. That's
Okay.
where, getting back to boot camp, you have what they call a dream sheet. My first one was aviation mechanics.
What you'd like to train for?
What would you like to do? My second one was being a Seabee. So that sounded interesting. So I put that down as well. And but there was a disclaimer that if you're going to join the Seabees, you're going to have to be willing to go make 2 tours to Vietnam rather than 1. Yeah.
Oh.
And the reason for that was because the training was so extensive on the various pieces of equipment. Because when you're a heavy equipment operator in the Seabees, you have to learn how to operate every single piece of equipment. From a bulldozer to a crane to an earth mover to a forklift, whatever it is. Unlike the Army, if you're going to be in the engineering, whatever, you're going to be a truck driver, and that's all you're going to do for 4 years or whatever.
Oh.
But with the Seabees, you would see an officer would see your rate, which is a bulldozer, and he'd say, "EO, get on that piece of equipment and start doing this, that, and the other thing with it." So that's why it was so extensive, that was a good
How long were
learning
you doing
experience.
that kind of training before you shipped out?
That took a while because with MCB 53 at one time back in World War II, they commissioned it and they decommissioned it after the war. The Seabees were formed from when the military decided, in order to be able to win a war, you've got to be able to have the backup of with specialized trained individuals to build roads or to build bridges or to build
all the infrastructure.
all the infrastructure that needs to be done. So that's when the Seabees came to be. Initially, what they said is they were taking trained people who were already trained and very professional at their job, and they would give them a higher rate to get into the service.
Okay, an inducement again.
Yeah, an inducement. Yeah. So that's how the Seabees got started, and from there I went to A school and in Davisville, and we also did some combat training in Rhode Island, different area in Rhode Island. And also, we had to do combat training in Cherry Point at Paris Island, Camp Lejeune. Yeah.
How'd you get there?
Well, we flew on the old Goonie birds, the C-47s, C-48s, and that was interesting, to say the
Now,
least.
did everybody have to do that training?
Oh yeah, you had to have combat training to go to Vietnam. Yeah.
So actually, you were lined up and mixing with Marines who were doing specific training.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
how would Were you accepted or not?
By the Marines? Yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we would barter all the time. They would need some 2x4s. We get them 2x4s, and in Vietnam, they would give us some C4, which...
okay. I didn't hear that.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, we used it for cooking. We did not use it. If you put if you put an igniter in there, the thing will blow up. But if you just cut a slice of it off and set it down and put a match to it, it'll burn very, very hot, but it will not explode. So that's what we used to use when we were out in the field, and we had our sea rations and that, and we just open up our can and start a little fire, and next thing you know, the beanie weenies were all set to go.
Set and bubbling.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Very, very hot. So that was interesting.
Now, in there, did you have any special training with respect to weapons? Sidearms, machine guns, K-bars, whatever?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. That was, even bazookas and everything,
okay.
And it was, mostly our M16s and 45s and stuff like that, the stuff that we'd be using at the ready. And then it was time for us to leave go overseas.
Okay.
All right. Now that was a 24-hour flight. It was 3 8-hour flights, and what would happen? The crew would change. From what I can remember, it was a Pan Am. It was commercial airlines.
Okay.
And
with the hostesses and all that?
Yeah, with the hostesses and that, yeah.
First class.
From what I can remember, yeah. And so we went from Quonset Point, we went to somewhere in California, and then Hawaii, and then Vietnam, I believe. On the way back, it was different. It was, I think it was like Japan, and then up Anchorage, Alaska.
Okay.
And then home. So, but that was a beautiful bird, I'll say that much, especially on the way home.
Going back, yeah. Now, when did you leave? What month, day, or year, season?
Well, that's what I find confusing. When we left right around the 1st of 1968. We took all of 67 to train. It took over a year, actually. Part of 66 and also 67. So come January, and I could have sworn it was like right around New Year's Day, and I thought that the Tet Offensive happened on January 2nd. But and then you lose a day or whatever. So once we got there, I noticed that landing in Da Nang was a lot different than landing in the other two areas, because the plane would go into a very steep dive, and then it would pull up and stop as quickly as it could on a runway and pull over, and we disembark in a hurry, and all our equipment would leave the plane as well, and then the plane would turn around. It would either, I can't remember if it took on more people or if it just took off, but it had to leave in a hurry. The engines were running the whole time.
What, are you getting shot at?
Well, there's nothing that the North Vietnamese would like more than to shoot down a plane just as it's coming in for a landing, or if it's sitting there, especially a commercial airline. That would certainly cause a lot of problems at home, if they see that these poor soldiers never even had a chance to step off the plane where it got blown off. So for that, and that had happened when I was up at Quang Tri. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself now, but there was a C-130 that we see at the end of the runway that was being burnt. What happens is I guess it's made out of magnesium or something, or part magnesium, and they would set it afire, and then they would just let it burn. So apparently, everybody died in that particular plane crash.
And they kept him aboard and just like a funeral pyre?
Yeah, they wanted to melt it down to nothing because they didn't want the enemy to grab any parts that might be usable. Because they would use anything. I mean, we had to bury our cans, tin cans, because if they would take just a lid of a can of beanie weenies or whatever, with that they could make contact for a landmine. You know what I mean? An improvised, what you call an improvised
IUD.
Yeah, IUD. Yeah, and so we had to bury all that stuff, and just to be sure that that they wouldn't be able to use something like this. They would use anything. They were extremely primitive when it came to that.
Clever, not primitive.
Yeah, well, clever. Yes, clever for sure. Yeah. So, but as soon as I got off the plane in Da Nang, I noticed it was like a pungent odor, and I could never really put my finger down. It just didn't smell good, and it was hot and it was humid.
Opening up an oven door.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So we went down, and from there we ended up going to Camp Adnire. Camp Adnire was named after a Seabee who got killed in Vietnam, and Marvin Shield was the first one to get killed, and he was the only one that ever received the highest award
Medal
that you
of
could.
Honor?
Yeah, the Medal of Honor, the
He
highest
was a
award.
cook striker, wasn't he?
I'm sorry.
Wasn't he a cook striker
Uh,
or baker?
Yeah, I don't know, but they got in a tremendous firefight, and he saved everybody.
Yeah.
He just kept pulling the wounded, and he even after being shot, he still would go back and get more. It was just unbelievable what he did. So he was the first one to die. And there's probably 17, I'm guessing 17, 18 camps in Vietnam, and they all had a name, and I want to research that further. I believe that every single one is a Seabee that died.
Mm-hmm.
I seriously believe that. I mean, out of two, the two most famous ones, I mean, they were right there, so... at any rate,
What were your duties when you got there? How were you assigned? Where did you go?
well, I was in what they call the advanced party. I was one of the first ones to get there. So when we got there, they said LeBlanc, and there was another guy. Says, go back, grab these stake trucks, and which are trucks that you could load stuff in the back. They call them stake trucks, not dump trucks, and go get the rest of the sea bags and all of that stuff, all that. So I took off and went down, and I wasn't driving more than probably 10 minutes, and I came up to a stop sign, and I see this guy is laying underneath a pickup truck, and he's just splayed there, and all you could see was his head and his torso, and he was dead, And they had eyewitnesses that came to the accident, and they were all Vietnamese. And then the driver was telling them what happened, and then all of a sudden he went like bang, like that, and they all burst out laughing. So that kind of gave me an idea of what life was worth over there. It wasn't really worth.
No, was that guy that was the victim? Was he a GI or a civilian?
No, he had a Navy truck, but he was a civilian working.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a civilian. Yeah,
It was a family joke.
I don't know. I didn't find anything funny about
I know, but
and on the way back, I saw this ambulance loading it was a small young girl that, and her bike was all crumpled up and that stuff, you know, and she had just got run over. And they ended up, the ambulance just drove off, no lights or nothing, you know, so you knew she was dead. There was no emergency at that point, you know. So it's, and the word was in Vietnam, if you accidentally ran over a family member, $30 and a handshake would resolve the whole
Wow.
issue. Yeah, $30
Cheap.
and a handshake. Yeah, yeah. That's so. You know, I mean, it was entering a totally different world. So, so again, getting there in Da Nang, we replaced MCB7. So we said MCB7 is good enough. You know, we don't need to hunker down anymore. You know, the bunker looked okay, but then we got hit that night, and we got hit so bad that we got hit. Actually,
What do you mean you were hit? Attacked?
hit by mortars. Hit by mortars, and we got hit like, I think the first night it was like 5 times in one night, you know. So we get the all clear, we go back in the sack, and then next thing you know, we hear that siren that really scares the hell out of you. So so the next morning we got up and we reinforced the bunkers a little bit better, you know, and threw some cigarettes in there and whatnot. So
Why?
Well,
There must be a story on the back of that.
well, you know, I mean, what would happen is if we'd be there for probably 15, 20 minutes, and somebody says, I don't care. I'm going to get my cigarettes, you know. I'm going to get my Lucky. So they take off and they say, hey, get my Marlboros in. And somebody, I would say, get my Winstons. And they're on top of it here, there, and everywhere. So the following day, we just each took a carton of brand, threw them right in there.
Okay.
Because we knew
Predisposed.
we'd be back there, yeah. So, like I said, we got hit real bad, and I thought that was the beginning of Tet, but I understand it might have been later. But regardless, we got hit very, very badly. And we were green. We were, you know, even the CO was green. The commanding officer was green, and he was living in an underground hospital. That's where his headquarters were, and that's where he stayed. And one of them reported, he said, I see some sampans. Those are small boats that the Vietnamese use. And he said, they're coming to shore. And the CO said,
how could he see them if he was underground?
No. Sorry, the bunker, one of the bunkers spotted them.
Oh, okay.
You know? Yeah, I'm sorry. One of the bunkers spotted them. And then the CO would say, well, keep an eye on them. And he says, they're on land and they got tubes on their backs, and he said, well, keep an eye on them. So the next thing you know, he said, he said, I got an M79 rocket launcher set, and that what that does is it's like a short gun that's barrels about that big, and the shell looks like an overgrown .22, but what it is, it's a grenade. It fires a grenade. So he says, I got it set at, 35 meters. I said, I could drop this right on the head. No, keep an eye on them. And the next thing you know, we got hit. And that's when we get hit real bad. And the following day, a major from MAG 16, a Marine major, came across, and MAG is Military Air Group. And he gave RCO hell. He said, anything moves down there, you shoot it. You absolutely shoot it. So it was a learning experience for all of us. But when they pulled the ambulance right in front of my hooch the next day, they opened up the doors, with the big red cross and a white circle, and there was a spigot there to turn the spigot on, and it just started washing down, and everything that got washed down all just came out. It was all blood, and it was all our guys, Seabees. So we had 17 casualties that night, right off the bat. Fortunately, nobody died, but some were sent home because they were so badly hit.
How were you?
Well, I was fine. I guess I was moving faster than the other ones,
Okay.
So, and I remember one time we were in the bunkers, and all of a sudden, you see, we would wait for an all clear. You get the sirens, then you go in and you take cover. Then you would get the all clear. But in between, you could, and we did, get a couple of messages. One was, we need A negative blood immediately. So I was A negative, and I didn't even have to think twice. I figured, hey,
Go, I get some. Yeah.
if I could save somebody's life with my blood, I'm certainly going to do it. To hell with the needle, And so I ran in, got my flak jacket and my helmet, and I got down to the hospital. And by the time I was there was a line, and they said, "No, you're all set. We've got more than enough than we need." Because A negative is a universal donor. So we could give to anybody. So that's the fastest way to do it. But it was nice to know that other people are willing to, this is life and death stuff, it's not. And there was another time when we were down there, and all of a sudden we got a different blast. We knew what all of the blasts were, and it was like maybe 3 short blasts, and that was...
What, a whistle, a gunshot, or what?
Well, the same siren that they used.
Oh?
Yeah, the same siren, but it was a different signal. It meant the enemy is right on...
the doorstep.
Right, yeah. It's right, it's coming right towards us, and we had to get to a defense position. So that's what we did. We started, we grabbed our M16 and that and helmet, and then we rushed as fast as we could. Well, I was from point A to point B. Halfway through, we were still getting hit, Get halfway through, I just said, I can't run anymore. I was just, completely ran out of gas until all of a sudden there was this huge explosion. I think it hit a paint locker or something, not a paint locker, but a paint storage area. Mm-hmm. And that thing just went off it was like it was daylight. And then all of a sudden, I got my second wind, and I booted it. I must have been running twice as fast as I was running the first time. But once we got to where we were supposed to be, we were in a much larger bunker. And being in that bunker, we were waiting for orders. Now, the Marines were trying to push the enemy towards us, but we had to be careful because we had the Marines behind us, and behind that, we had a MASH hospital, a regular MASH type of hospital. And so we were waiting for word, and next thing you know, this friend of mine, Steve Wilson, says, I'm going out, because it would get hot in there, so I'm going to go out and have a cigarette. So he went out, and then he got shot right in the hand, so that's how close they were. So we just stayed there, and finally we ended up, we got the all clear. So we didn't have to fire at them, thank God, because our motto is we build, we fight. We build first. We fight if we have to. That's our MO. So we were spared that, thank God. So the next day I had, what happens is as soon as we would not get hit, as soon as they would start dropping, mortars, the Marines would go full force out of the base, go around, see if they could pick up, North Vietnamese in the area. And sure enough, the Bunker 1 opened up the main gates and boom, 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 they took off. They came back the next day. They showed us. They said there was a cage type of a thing, where they had like maybe 8 or 9 different North Vietnamese, and the oldest one, he told the Marine told us is around 15 years old.
They're all kids.
Yeah, they're all kids. Yeah, and then he pulled up his black shirt, and he had a red dot, it was red, and he said right in his spine. Yeah, and they told us if ever an enemy comes at you like that, he says all these kids were drugged, and
that was a drug shot.
That was a shot. Yeah, they were like zombies. They would give them a hand grenade. They'd pull the pin, and then they would just keep marching at you until they would just fall over, and by then they'd hope that
and take some of them with you.
Take some Americans with you, or they had a rusted M14 with a bayonet, and they were just hoping that they would just lunge at you. So that's what their values of life was.
Yeah.
It was nothing. So so the Marine told us, if this ever happens, you see him coming at you, you take your M16, you get in a not a prone position, but you're squatting down.
Okay.
And then you lay M16 down, and then you hold it under your leg, I guess it was, and what you do is you just you put on full automatic, and you start shooting, and as you're shooting, it has a tendency to want to go from left to right. He says, aim for their knees, and just what you're going to do is just going to blow their knees off. He said that's the only way that you can stop them.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was pretty scary stuff.
Gets your attention.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Now, was this all during Tet, or was this after Tet?
No, Tet lasted quite a while, actually. We killed somewhere between 10 and probably 12,000 North Vietnamese in Da Nang. That's what I was told at the time.
Oh, the body count bit.
The body count, they would just line them up, and they'd put tags on their toes and stuff like that, and the woman would go and try to retrieve their men, and they were in tears because the guy was at the bottom of the pile. You gotta get him. It was just awful. So the couple of days after, for 3 days we ended up staying in our fatigues. And one night when we got hit, it was dark, unless something exploded over us, and I hit the corner of our hooch, which would house like maybe 24 men in one hooch.
And is that a tent or a Quonset hut?
Yeah, no, that's that was made out of plywood and 2x4s, screen, upper screen, and also tin roof.
They have a deck on it?
Yeah, I had a deck, had a plywood deck.
Okay.
Yeah. So so I was jumping out of there, and then next thing you know, I caught the edge of the steel corrugated steel roof, metal roof, and it tore into my leg. And of course I jumped in, sand and all and whatnot, and for 3 days, we never showered or anything. We just stayed in our, yeah, I know it, yeah. So when we finally got the all clear that we could take a shower during the day, I went to take my fatigues off, and they were embedded, my left leg was embedded into my fatigues. So I had to take it and pull it off. When I pulled it off, started bleeding again. So I just cleaned it off with some, I didn't bother going to sick bay. I just cleaned it off with some alcohol and that stuff. And I bandaged it up, and I could have used a couple stitches, but it was fine.
That didn't qualify for a Purple Heart. Did it?
Well, it probably could have. You know, I could have been. I could
That's the
have.
question.
Yeah, I know it. I could have been. Could have been another John Kerry. You know.
No, don't go there.
Well, at any rate, one day, one night, I was actually scared stiff. You know, I mean, what happened is there was a lot of mosquitoes there, so I put a mosquito net over my hooch, you know, over my cot, I should say, yeah. And then I tightened up all the blanket, the sheets, and everything, and I was kind of like, you know, really nice and snug in there. But then all of a sudden we got the siren that tell us to hit the deck, and I could hear everybody rumbling down, and I was half asleep, and I'm trying to move, and I couldn't move.
You get yourself
Yeah. And then finally I came to, and I said, "Wow, I gotta get out of here! I'm the last one out." So I sprung out, and I ran like a son of a gun, and I was able to take cover in that. But it just goes to show you, you know, you never know what to expect, you know, especially from waking up from a deep sleep. So, you know, probably a week or two later, I saw one jet go down. It wasn't a Phantom. It wasn't F4 Phantom. It was the newer one that came out, F-111 or something. And I could see it. All of a sudden, the chute popped out.
Oh, ejected.
Yeah, and then the thing is going out in the ocean. The plane's going out in the ocean. Then the guy's chute opens up, and then he's going into the ocean. Right away, following him, 2 helicopters, and they're gonna go pick him up right up, pluck him right out. Yeah. So I mean that was nice. And then I'm coming back the same day. I'm coming back, and just as I'm going to take a right to get into my camp, I see this huge engine, and it was from a Phantom, F4 Phantom, right there, you know. So I'm pulling in. What the hell happened over here? They said, "Oh man," I said, "a jet just blew up right overhead." And he says, when they were in their tin roof, they would hear the parts falling off on the tin roof and that stuff, you know. So I would imagine that the pilot was able to get out okay. So that was good. So yeah, I'd say we got to keep going here. Yeah. All right. Bunkers, different kind of bunkers. I was in bunker 1, probably bunker 14, bunker probably 17, 18, and various things happen. I remember one time the last one, that particular bunker, I would be facing, and I could, with binoculars, I could see what was going. I could see the hospital. So I'd be looking, and then all of a sudden, the helicopters started coming in, one after another. And as soon as they would land, they'd run out there with a stretcher, and then they'd grab someone, and then they'd go bring them into the hospital. So, and then one time I'd see them, they're running in, and all of a sudden, something fell off the gurney. So they stopped, and he went back, and he picked it up. It was about this big. It was probably the guy's forearm. You know, they just took it, threw it on it, and then walked him into the. So that was, you know, that was pretty earth-shattering. I went to I stopped by that same bunker one day, and I see this friend of mine, George. He was telling me, "Hey, you wouldn't believe what just happened." I said, "Well, what happened?" He says, I was. He said, I had this Marine major pull up and saying, you know, and he saluted him. He says, "How you doing, son?" You know, he says, "Good, good." And what he was doing, he was shuffling his feet, and he had his hand behind him the whole time, you know. So he said, "Well, all right, keep up the good work." He said, "Will do," you know. So he goes to take off. He had a live grenade in the back of his head.
Major?
No. This guy George,
Oh.
he was playing with it, and then he pulled the pin, and the pin fell in the sand. So
Geez,
when,
you can bring up a fragging.
when the Marine came in, he was kind of just shuffling his feet around, He was looking for the pin.
That makes sense now, yeah.
And then the Marine says, "How you doing?" So he said, "Oh, fine." Any action? Nope. Everything's okay.
Just
Take
don't
care.
salute me, the other hand.
So then he continued to look for the pin. He finally found it and put it in the hand grenade. So that was something. Now,
That was the end of your second tour?
no, I didn't. I only made one tour because my lung collapsed from working in the batch plant. The batch plant was Portland. It's a cement
With the
batch
dust.
plant. Yeah, it was, and it's like talcum powder, very, very light, and it was 110, 115 degrees on an average day. And what would happen, you'd be sweating, and then the wind would pick up, and then you'd be all gray.
Now, let me stop you right there.
Sure.
You told me you were a heavy equipment operator. Now, what were you doing mixing cement? Did
Well,
you have a change of some reason?
No, I was in charge of keeping the yard in ship shape by using my bulldozer and bringing up the piles.
Okay, 'cause you just grabbed that from nowhere.
Yeah. Well, picking up the piles, and what I was doing at the time is I'd be going up and with 2 pallets of Portland cement, and we'd end up going there, and that was. You'd see them; they'd be all gray, and their eyes were white, and their mouth was pink. Back then, they didn't think, you would think after World War II, they would figure my ears are ringing, they should have got me some ear protection.
Yeah. Okay.
And now I get tinnitus. My lungs collapsed from breathing that Portland cement. The lye burnt some tissues in my lung. And you would think that by now that they would have, used their head, but
They're paying for it now.
Now they're paying for it. They're paying a great deal too, because now I ended up with Agent Orange. I'm taking 4 pills right now for my heart alone, and if I can't keep my heart from getting, I have to stop it from getting weaker. If I can't with those 4 pills, it's going to end up happening. My heart's going to enlarge, and the only thing that'll be able to save me will be a heart transplant. So I'm not looking forward to that, but whatever. Okay, Marble Mountain. Let's see. Yeah.
You got 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll one of the things, our motto is we build, we fight. So yeah, we build, we fight. Fortunately for me, most of my fighting was done in bars and stuff like that. Yeah.
Did you live?
Yeah. Well, I was sitting at a table with some New Englanders and that stuff, and then we had this other table that was a bunch of rednecks from down below, and I had bought a bag of popcorn, and we were drinking and having a good time. All of a sudden, this arm keeps going over, grabbing popcorn out of my bag, So I said, "Hey, you want to get your own popcorn? You mind?" So I turned around, and all of a sudden, I hear a chair back up, and I turned around and look, and I saw this fist coming at me, and he had a good sized ring on him, and then when he went to hit me, I moved over and he cut me over here with the ring. I'm sure it wasn't a high school ring because I don't think he made it that high.
Grammar school knuckle for him.
Yeah. So what are you going to do? You got to jump up and, put yourself in that fighting mode. You can't say, well, please don't hit me, You're in a war zone. So I stand there, and fortunately, this big first class can stop and you say, break it up, you guys. You guys, if you want to fight, you could take it outside. So I thought that gave me just enough time to think. I said, I'll fight you when you're sober. And then the first class says, you okay with this? I said, "Oh, yeah." So we sat down. I said, good, I bought myself some time.
Yeah.
So the next thing you know, we finished our drink. I said, I think it's late enough. We're going to get going. The next day he comes over and he scratches. And I knew he used to love to fight because he had his false teeth pinned to his shirt. He didn't want to lose them. So he came up and he scratched and said, geez, I'm awful sorry. I don't remember what happened. I says, well, from now on, it says, can you get your own popcorn?
Yeah.
It's only a nickel a bag. So that ended that. But before we get too much food, we don't have a lot of time left. I can see that. There was probably probably 10 truck drivers that they needed over up at Quang Tree. So we got wasn't. We had no choice. It's LeBlanc. You're going to go up. You're going to go up. You're going to go up.
Now, were you leading that group, or you just wanted the number?
No, I was just. I mean, it just happened to be the one that's gonna be going. So, getting over there, I don't have enough time to talk about.
Well,
We used an LST, and it was that was just an incredible trip. I'll probably get back to it if I have more time. But what was important is when I got to Quang Tree, I saw that they had just built, and I'm sure it was the Seabees, they had just built a hospital, a MASH type of hospital. And I went in there, and what it was an octagon, huge octagon room, and they had 8 doors, or maybe 7 doors, because one was getting through. And in the middle was a huge porcelain bowl that was, oh God, I would say probably 3 times the size of this. It was like that, And in the middle of it was a big flush valve, and they had a rope on it. So what it was, these were all operating rooms. And the only thing that they were doing was cutting off what they had to cut off. So one would go and throw a foot in there, somebody else would throw a leg, somebody would throw a hand in there, another door would open, they'd throw an arm, or whatever they couldn't save, they threw in there, then they would pull that, and it was a chemical that would flush and go down to a chemical pond that ate everything, the flesh and the bones and all.
Leave no trace.
So exactly. So we were there, and we saw pallets and pallets and pallets of concrete. Concrete bags, 90-pound bags of Portland cement. Okay. Not the ready mix, just the cement. So this lieutenant comes by, and he's got a slide rule, and he already had the area paced off. It was a huge square, and he said, "Okay," he says, "we want you to everybody start taking the concrete bags, and I want you to put them side by side, and I want you to leave like 12 inches between each bag, and from head to tail, I want you to make that like 6 inches or something." So that's the same look I had. That's why.
Okay, go ahead.
Another word for Seabee is a confused bastard.
Yeah.
What the hell are we doing? But apparently he knew, and so we did. There was this field that was just nothing but. I wish I would have taken a picture,
Well, you didn't, but go ahead.
Yeah. So then so we said, okay, what do we do now? He said, well, grab your machetes and start shaking it out, throw the paper out. So that's what we did. We threw the bags out with nothing but gray. Then he had a rototiller go in, started rototilling back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then next thing you know, a grader graded it, and then a water truck came over. Water truck watered it, saturated the whole thing. And then the next day, it was a helipad for 4 helicopters.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you knew it was all right.
Yeah, we knew. Then we knew what it was for. But I mean, it goes to show you, we couldn't get a batch plant up there, and you can't truck cement, that far without it getting solid. So he used the sand that was already there, and all he did is mix the
It was
cement
a
with the
big
water
mix, yeah.
and mixed it up. I mean, it was
fine.
brilliant, and you stop and think about it.
Now you can call him Clever Boy.
Yeah, clever, yeah, right. So at any rate, back when we were in Da Nang, we managed to cut off. We managed to cut off General Westmoreland.
No?
Yeah, we went through a communications cable that had hundreds and hundreds of wires, and because we didn't have a dig safe, we didn't know that we were going to cut through a communication cable. And while we were there, all of a sudden, we started taking rounds. So it was great. All we had to do was jump in a ditch. The ditch was already there. So that saved us right there.
I'm going to have to cut you short again.
Yeah.
One question.
Yeah.
With what you've seen and you've gone through, what advice would you give some of the kids as they get into school? Should they volunteer to join the branch and learn a trade? Or just how would you react to it, become responsible?
Ideally, I wish the U.S. would adopt the same thing as they do in Sweden. I believe it's Sweden, where you automatically,
compulsory.
after high school, 2 years of service, and then after that you can go to college. The problem with that is that it would break the United States of America. I mean, we would be flat broke if every single one of them was a soldier for 2 years. So that's oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, just think, I mean, they were cutting us back when the war was starting to slow down, So can you imagine, instead of just a handful of us going into the service, to have an entire classroom and then another entire classroom and another one? It would be phenomenal.
Good answer. You're damn right.
Yeah, but I mean, it would be a wonderful idea to implement that,
Okay.
but it's just not made.
To kind of wrap it up, could you give us a little story of what your position is now after the war is over? When did you start Island X? And some people join you?
Yeah, well,
recruiting.
I was, after I got out of service, I ended up going to, the post office for the most part, I spent 32 years in post office. And then I found out that Island X4 out of Laconia was having a barbecue. And I got to meet them, and it ended up, I joined up right away. Now I'm the commander.
Okay. Say thank you. It's
Thank
been
you.
fast. This time we did it.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, we did. Yeah, there's still more. I wrote a book, and there's a lot more in the book.
I know, but
Maybe
we can do page 2 later on. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm afraid we're going to have to say, folks, that it's a wrap, which means it's over and done with. But again, I want to do 2 things. Remind you of this. It's an emergency lifesaver. Any guy and gal who needs some help, and if you have friends who think you need help, listen to them. It'll help keep you going. 211, any place in the state of New Hampshire. Also, if you've seen what you'd like to see here and do want to come and share your service with us, I'm here, and hopefully we'll be able to do it. Again, Bob Stevens saying thank you. Stay healthy, but more important, come and see me.